I mentioned to you Friday night that I would be interviewing Mr. Beniamino Gigli, who is considered by many of the experts to be the world's greatest living tenor. I am broadcasting to you from Mr. Gigli's dressing room at the Stockholm Opera House, where Mr. Gigli is preparing for his role in the opera Tosca, which will start in about a half an hour. I'd expected there to be a lot of excitement here, with stage directors running in and out and technical directors dashing around shouting at the tops of their lungs, but it isn't like that at all. Everyone backstage is going about his business quietly, and here in the dressing room we can't hear a sound of what's going on outside. Mr. Gigli has been very calmly and unhurriedly applying his stage makeup, and he's just finishing up now, so let's go over and talk with him. Welcome to our program, The Women's Side of Sweden, Mr. Gigli. It's an honor to have you with us.
Thank you, Miss Burnett. It is a pleasure.
Our listeners will want to hear all about you, Mr. Gigli, so let's start way back at the beginning. When did you first start to sing in public?
I started when I was a little boy. I sang in the choir at my church in Recanatese, Italy, where I was born.
Before we began broadcasting, you were telling me that was how most of the Italian singers begin their career, and it is actually the people of the town who decide when a boy is to become a singer. What did you do then? Did you become a professional singer immediately, or what?
No, when I realized that singing was to be my career, I began training my voice.
Uh-huh. And then you were awarded several scholarships from the singing academies. Training a voice takes a long time, doesn't it, Mr. Gigli?
Yes, it does. A singer, in order to be a really good, can never study too much. He must spend his life training. I am still learning. It is the secret of singing.
Tell me, how old were you when you started singing professionally?
I was 24 years old.
And you'll be 62 on the 20th of next month. That means you've been singing professionally for 38 years. And the critics say that your voice has never been better than it is now. Your concert the other night certainly was a tremendous success. I lost count of the encores. How many were there?
I sang many encore as the audience called for.
And in Copenhagen, Denmark, you gave 9 encores. You say you'll be leaving Sweden tomorrow. What are your plans then?
I will give one more concert in Copenhagen, 2 in Germany, and about 20 in England.
20 in England. Then you'll be there for about 2 months. These tours certainly keep you away from home for long periods at a time. Mrs. Gigli doesn't usually travel with you, does she?
No, she very seldom goes on a tour with me.
Before the broadcast, you were telling me about your children. You have a 32-year-old son who is a doctor of agriculture and a daughter who is also a very great singer. Just what does she do?
My daughter Rina is a soprano and sings with the Naples Opera Company.
I believe this is the 3rd time you've been to Sweden, Mr. Gigli. I realize you're only here for 2 or 3 days at a time, but I'd like very much to get your opinion of the Swedish people.
I like them very much. They seem to be very friendly, and they are most certainly a wonderful audience.
Before we went on the air, you were telling me about how you once took over Crusoe's role in Andrea Chenier. May I tell our listeners about it?
Yes, please do.
It was like this. About a year before Crusoe died, he was scheduled to sing Andrea Chenier at the Metropolitan Opera House in New York. He'd been sick for some time, and on this particular night, he wasn't able to appear. So Mr. Gatti Casazza, the manager of the Metropolitan, although 3 or 4 of the leading tenors had seniority over Mr. Gigli, decided that Mr. Gigli would take Crusoe's place that night. He did, and the following day, all the critics, without exception, wrote that his interpretation of the role was unique.
Yes, that was the greatest thrill of my life.
I can understand that. You were also telling me that after Caruso died, the question came up of who was to take his place.
Yes, and I said that it was impossible to replace Caruso. It is a performance to say so. He was the great father of all artists.
And after Caruso's death, Mr. Gigli, Mr. Gigli, who knew all of Caruso's tremendous repertoire, took over and established his own personal talent. He gave not only his art, but his heart as well, as did Caruso. Whenever you sang after Caruso's death, Mr. Gigli, did all critics refrain from comparing you with him?
Yes, after each opera, they said that my interpretation was unique of original, but never did they compare me with Caruso.
Mr. Gigli, is it true that you are donating a large amount of money to the charity fund of the Lyrics Artists Association?
Yes, it is.
That's certainly a wonderful gesture on your part. And is it also true that you're going to be decorated tonight?
Yes, that is so. Between the first and the second act, I will receive a decoration from the Lord Chamberlain to the King.
I understand that the king himself would have honored you with his presence at the performance, but as the whole court is in mourning for the King of England, you must be very pleased about getting a direct decoration from the Royal House of Sweden.
Yes, I am very thrilled about it.
Mr. Gigli, I want to thank you so very much for being on our program. It was a great pleasure for us, and I do hope you'll consent to coming back for another program the next time you're in Sweden.
Thank you, Miss Burnett. I would be happy to come back.
Thank you. You have been listening to Beniamino Gigli, world-famous tenor, in an interview from his dressing room at the Opera House here in Stockholm, Sweden.